Demoted, then they realized they fed up. Worked 9 years at a well-known company worldwide provider of various products. Won't name this company, but it was a division of this company I worked for. I started at this company at the bottom as a tech, did my job well, and excelled upwards. After 6 years, I was promoted into the national support group, and also then excelled at this position. It was well paid, and salary which was very nice, bump in pay, and the hours were great. After a year in the new position, I was promoted to a co-operator position, which I shared with another, which we were very good friends and got along very well. To this day, we still do lunches and chat quite frequently. Now, I was trained up on the in-house software that runs the dispatching of techs, which was made by a in-house software developer, which the software used codes for areas and states. Very complex. But for him it worked, though no documentation, whatsoever, no manual, nothing. The guy that had the position before me was leaving the company for a better offer, so he took a month to train me on this software. And of course I wrote down all the codes for all the areas. Just so I didn't get anything wrong, since there was no manual or instructions, he leaves the company. A year later, the developer of this software dies from cancer. So now, no one but myself knows how to use this software. And taking vacations were far and in between due to this issue. I constantly asked for a backup to be trained so they can do this job while I go on vacations. At this point, I could only take 2 days at a time for vacation. And my wedding was upcoming in 8 months, and we were taking a month-long honeymoon. No, Go got denied every time I requested a replacement to be trained. When my co-operator and I took over this new department, it was in shambles. Our turnover for repairs was sitting around 8 days, which upset a lot of customers. Due to these machines being used constantly during working hours, we brainstormed and came up with solutions to fix this and reduce downtimes dramatically. The bad thing about this is that it put extreme pressure on logistics to get parts overnight to techs in the field, which logistics manager was okay with, which he in turn hired enough guys to take this burden on and was working out pretty well. This turned out to be great. We reduced our downtime from 8 days to on average 2 days. Customers commented constantly about how much better our service was and how they were definitely happy with how their repairs were going. Then it starts to go south from this point. My manager was looking to move up the ladder and need to hire someone for his position. Of course, me and my co-operator apply for position. Since we know how to run this division and think we could do the job great, we both get overlooked for manager's friend, which he had no experience in this division whatsoever. He was actually the one of the logistics purchasers. He has no idea whatsoever to run our department, nor any technical experience whatsoever. He of course gets this position, and right off the bat, this stupid idiot wants to change how we do things and reduce the strain on the logistics group. Co-operator and myself immediately protest and oppose his changes with prejudice and vigor, though this fell on deaf ears. When he tells us to implement the changes, I refuse, and so does my co-operator. For weeks we argue with manager's friend, which is now my manager, and he gets upset and continuously fights with us to make the changes. We again refuse. I emailed his manager and explained the situation and pointed out that it would increase repairs and our customers would be very unhappy. At this time, we grew the base of our customers 20-fold, and our satisfaction rating on all our reviews were in the upper 90s, though these emails and everything that co-operator and I were explaining went on deaf ears. At this point, manager's friend feels that I am the instigator of the disobedience, and that week I was called into a conference room with HR, manager's friend and his manager. They informed me I was going to be demoted from operator to dispatcher due to my inability to be a team player and confrontational to my manager, etc., etc. So I said, fine with me. Meant less work and same pay. So I'm okay with this. Now with this job, you had certain functions of the job that you could and could not do. You could only do what was assigned to you for that job description. Dispatchers could only dispatch calls to techs and not assign their own calls. That was my previous job. My co-operator, the time was in charge of escalations and onboarding techs and did not know the system I used to dispatch these calls. Next day, I come in and sit at my desk, waiting for calls to be put on my board, knowing that there was no one now to dispatch calls to the dispatchers. After about 4 hours, I get approached by manager's friend, asking why I was not dispatching calls to everyone. I politely said, remember I got demoted, I can't dispatch, it's not part of my job description, and I don't want to be fired for doing something that I am not allowed to do. The dread on his face could be seen as it streaks up his back and hits him full force. At this point, he realized he just fucked up. Of course, his manager and HR did not know anything about this software that was developed in-house and had no instructions on how to use it. It was the backbone of this division's dispatching software. Without this, no calls could be dispatched out whatsoever. The news is now getting around that no calls are being dispatched, and manager's friend's manager now enters and asks what is going on. He soon realizes as well what happened. They then call me back into the conference room and ask me to train a replacement. Of course I refuse. The day ends and I go home. Next morning I show up for work on the dot and they call me back in yet again, offering my position back and to please start dispatching calls as soon as possible. Of course I refuse the promotion, pointing out key points that they brought up during my demotion meeting on why they were demoting me. And because of those points, I felt I had to overcome them in order to be able to accept the promotion, and it would be a great time to focus on my abilities that they outlined. They were flabbergasted and frustrated clearly. They get upset and tell me that I am holding the company hostage, and that they will have to take me to court. At this point, per my contract, I am now entitled to a lawyer, and they have to pay. Few days go by, of course, no calls being dispatched. They are now relying on emails and phone calls to get calls dispatched and parts ordered, and it's pandemonium abound. It is adding so much more time to each call, and ordering parts, the whole system is falling apart. I finally get contacted by a lawyer telling me that he is to represent me, and that he is being paid by the company I work for, but that he works for me, period, that he cannot talk to them without my knowledge, he cannot do anything against my own interests, and that he is being paid by them but works for me. He goes on to tell me that they can't force me to take a promotion, and they can't fire me if I fulfill my obligations of the employment contract, which was pretty easy, basically just show up on time, take breaks in specified time, and leave at specified time. So I do. This goes on for a month when they are finally getting to the breaking point. Repairs are exceeding 2 weeks, and customers are canceling their repair contracts due to service issues. They decided to demote me again to logistics. Now, the manager of logistics is a good friend, and he thinks this is retaliation for all these issues. So he just says to me to take a desk over in the corner and do my thing whatever I wanted. He wasn't going to punish me for their stupidity. We go to court, they present their case, and my lawyer presents mine. After 2 days, the judge rules in favor of me and says that a company cannot force me into a job or doing a job that I do not wish, and this would be considered enslavement. They press the judge to have me turn over the information to run the software that runs their division. The judge asked me if I had it written down. At this point, I didn't have it. I threw it away. So I answered honestly to the judge. Though I did say, I do remember how to use it and all the codes to dispatch since I did it for years, it became like second nature. Judge asked me if I would be willing to write down the instructions. I politely said no. Judge said, okay, that's that then. Judge asked me if I would be willing to write down the instructions. I politely said no. Judge said, okay, that's that then. Upon coming back to work the next day, I decided to start looking for another job. After about a month, I found a new position at another company, making about 10% more and with better options, and also agreed to give me the month off with salary for my honeymoon. So I wrote up a resignation letter and sent it to my manager, his manager, and the senior staff of the division, and also the CEO of the company, explaining everything that went on and why I was leaving the company, and wished them the best. That Friday, I packed up my personal stuff and left. 2 weeks later, I get a call from the CEO of the company, apologizing for what happened, and that all this information just came to light, and that the individuals involved were terminated. Manager's friend and his manager, and the one above him, which was sweet to my ears, and offered my job back, I politely declined. A few weeks after manager's friend was fired, I was told by my good friend and cooperator that he died from a drug overdose, which is sad and completely not deserved, no matter how much I hated him. The division I ran was merged into another division a year later after it was not able to recover. 30% of the people that worked for that division were laid off or transferred to other divisions. My cooperator is still working for same company though. He said after this whole ordeal, it never recovered and never was the same and had gone downhill dramatically, and he will be retiring this year.